the kind of game we're talking about, but let's introduce the players as we get into it. In the bottom right, we have the red Protoss player. He is Strange.
And spawning over in the top left, hailing from Austria, it is HateMe. It's always weird for me to watch Strange play, because I think he lives up to his name really well, and he is quite solid and all-round. He kind of reminds me of... He kind of has that Cristiano vibe to him, in that he's just solid, clean, plays a lot like a true grinder. So whatever he's doing, he's going to stick with certain builds that he's very, very fond of, very good at, and just execute them very solidly. If he goes up against somebody like a Hero Marine, which, you know, most people don't fare well against, but those kind of players can start to kind of analyze what their tendencies tend to be. But whenever they play against players that they're either equal to or better than, that's when they can just kind of absolutely snowball away with a victory. So I'm curious as to how well HateMe will fend off Strange's aggression.
Yeah, I think that, you know, even historically, when I think back to Strange, I'm like going years back. I'm like, even against some of the top players at previous events, like I remember he had a draw against Polt once way back when. He's someone that's always kind of been scrappy and a contender, not necessarily consistent enough to topple them. And like you were saying, against a more cerebral opponent, they're going to really break that down and analyze it and be ready for it. But this map to me is also quite interesting because you just have, it's one of the strangest layouts, at least to me, with the way that those third bases are positioned and how far out they can kind of feel at times with the airspace too. So are we going to see Strange bring that aggression? Do we feel like this is a situation that kind of encourages it? And on the other side of things, what does HateMe want to do with this? How is he going to move forward with this match? Do we just take it easy because it's the first one of the day? I don't think so. I feel like we're going to get a little bit of gas on the pedal, but in what way? That's what we need to see.
Yeah, certainly. Like, if I think about my StarCraft career, like in a nutshell, I loved playing players that people thought were better than me, because that kind of, I had nothing to lose then, you know? But if I ever played against people that people didn't know that well, let's say I played up against HateMe or Strange, I hated it because I knew they were very good, but not necessarily the community knew they were good. You know what I mean? So it was like, I felt that there was a lot of pressure, and if I lost, which could have been very likely given what shape they were in, it was always kind of problematic. Strange here, he was blocking the triangular third, but he does get a scout on where the third actually goes down. A very fast Twilight by him, not a Stargate opener, which, this could lead into quite a few things here, but very often we do see the Oracle being the unit of choice. Ooh, multiple gates.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I was thinking about. Maybe he wants to just turn it on very early. I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense, though. That Oracle is very popular. You get vision, of course. You can scout, that revelation tagging, seeing anything coming across the map early. But he's not thinking about that late into the game here. Very quick, resonating glaives. And we have Ling Speed coming in for HateMe. We have not yet seen a move into a roach horn or anything. So if he's just droning up, trying to connect the creep on those two bases, he is going to need to get another creep tumor down or two before it's fully connected. But just Lings alone, we know that they do tend to struggle against the resonating glaive adepts, but he's not slamming down a ton more gates. He's positioning himself to take that third. Whether he truly intends to commit to it, I'm going to assume so with how early he's getting it. So it's kind of an interesting build to throw out there. Can be aggressive, can do a lot of damage, but doesn't necessarily have to.
I mean, this can be as committal as he wants it to be. If this goes on for another 10 seconds or so without a Roach Warren being thrown down, I'm a bit worried for HateMe, but gets a scout off on this Twilight Council, and here he should see quite a few adepts. I won't be surprised if it's just like, boom, get down the Roach Warren kind of thing, maybe start trying to make a little wall that is natural. But so far, no reaction whatsoever within regards to what I thought would be the answer. Just getting a lot of Lings, and he does know something's coming, I think, because he's not droning, but it's going to be difficult.
I thought he saw the Adepts warping into the third base, but he starts +1 melee, which there's no way it'll finish in time for an attack that would be coming. He's just going to get a tremendous amount of Zerglings. At which point, I mean, it kind of boils down to position. If the Lings can get a big surround and all of the Queens are there, then he can start to chunk it down. But if those Adepts are able to get between a mineral patch or onto that ramp and kind of block that away from the Queens, then I think we can see the Adepts really get some work done. He's trying to force himself around that mineral line, getting between those two patches in the center. This is where those Zerglings really struggle to clean this up. But for the most part, he's just killing the Lings. He hasn't gotten to the drones yet. And now, as I say that, he makes it into the main base, and we start to see that first blood kind of come through, but he hasn't done that devastating damage yet.
No, he certainly hasn't. I think all things said and done, HateMe's actually defending this really well so far, and this is with +1 melee on the way. So it's like he's thought about the next stage of the game after holding this, and 2 drones died to that without a roach warren. Ah, well played, well handled.
Imagine, look, he killed 13 resonating glaive adepts. He didn't even build a roach warren, and like you said, that +1 finishing now means, well, yeah, obviously Strange doesn't want to commit to mass adept. We know that that's not really a strategy in this game. Blink is coming, the Forge, the Robo, but does he have enough to protect this third base? I think because +1's not done yet, maybe he can claw some time with the battery, but okay, so he does manage to get that defense set up somewhat nicely. I think that was maybe he could have tried to wait for +1 if he was going to dive on it. But otherwise, yeah, he didn't really have to change what he was doing to defend that attack. And I feel like that gives him a nice advantage here.
Yeah, it's a fun one between them because I'm looking at both their styles. Strange obviously went for this very acute timing where he wanted to deal damage, but was kind of greedy behind it as well. So we look at the probe count and drone count, very, very similar. On HateMe's side of the map, after surviving and not having to delve into roaches or anything like that, he's going for a Spire play, which I think is kind of cool, especially on a map like this, but especially that he's got nothing else to spend gas on, so getting the +2, he's going to have a lot of mutas, most likely, but he does have to survive whatever Strange is going to throw at him next, which probably will pack a punch.
Yeah, Warp Prism coming in, +1 attack. The Zerglings, by the way, getting +2 for them. So if he goes for a big Stalker attack, then you have some anti-air for when the Spire is done. But if it's anything else, then suddenly you can get wrecked, right? By Mutalisk just coming out and pushing you away. So Strange taking this 4th base. I think this is the move. Like maybe he wants to try to do something with the Prism, but we shouldn't expect him to be able to get away with it if HateMe's able to take that air control. You picking up what I'm putting down?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, if the Warp Prism is going to be used for harass purposes, then yeah, it's going to be shut down by these mutas. If these mutas ideally want to go uncontested into a main base somewhere or like a natural, whatever, you know, dealing with just probes kind of thing. But
gotcha.
Yeah, but this Warp Prism is going to come with the army, and from a kind of peculiar angle over here, like Strange is really trying to utilize the terrain, because here on a ramp and getting into this kind of position, that's going to be hard to deal with, especially with just pure Ling at the moment, which is all he has.
Yeah, it cuts down the available supply pretty significantly here, too, for whatever's going to be morphed in next by HateMe. Those force fields on the Lings are going to be crucial as that +1 can ravage the Stalkers. The Mutalisk count is not crazy high yet, but pulls back. And we see that more and more Lings pouring through. The Stalkers, you have those 2 targets that you need to take care of with those Mutalisks. So coming in, Warp Prism's going to try to reinforce. Mutalisks are going for the dive, and he gets it, but not before the rest of the Stalkers warp in. So it's pretty much just Stalkers now with this army. An Adept or 2 still in there with the Sentry, but the Lings do not have that +2 attack yet. The drones have to be pulled, and Strange appears to be getting it done in game number 1. 70 workers to 63, but the Stalkers, if they die, he's still got that opportunity to rebuild. He didn't get quite as many drones as I thought. I guess 63 left is still very playable position for him. But Protoss being on an even number of bases to Zerg is still, if he defends the counterattack, not that bad.
It is scary, but 13 mutas with 30 Lings. I think this counterattack from HateMe could actually put Strange in a world of trouble. Like, the one thing that's actually really good for Strange is, yeah, you hit it on the head. The fact that he's on 4 bases with a really healthy probe count. But that +2 from HateMe, and the fact that he is on this Ling Muta Bane combo, like, I feel like his scary zone was dying to that kind of push, and he stayed alive. So now he can be super greedy, and he can kind of tech into whatever he wants. But the one worry for him is obviously if Archons join the mix and stuff, because then he doesn't have much answer for them.
Yeah, it's like rotating those units through the composition, because the Stalkers, they had that ability, right? But then we saw the Zerglings with those upgrades. They are so good against them. And with +2, taking a similar fight anytime soon would go even worse. But then you have to keep in mind that Baneling run-bys are going to become a factor against those probes with +2 being done. So things can turn around very quickly as HateMe is going to secure that north end expansion. And like you were mentioning before, we don't have a Stargate. He didn't open with a Stargate. The option to transition quickly into Phoenix or anything like that isn't really on the table for him. So you could still see the Mutas try to make a play for the main, but he's going to check the front first. Very bold. Maybe thinking about going for it.
I like this wall. Like this gateway wall is actually very nice. Stalkers were obviously in a good position as well. HateMe is supply blocked here. We'll have Overlords finishing up pretty soon, but just trying to open up the space, make things a little bit scary for Strange. And Strange is very much positioned here, there, and everywhere. And Baneling speed is done now. He's going for it.
Yeah, those Banes kind of getting choked up on the force field by the pylon. Can't quite make it to the mineral line. You don't necessarily want to trade against just the Stalkers if you can get the probes too, but he's going to move through the rest of them, soften them up for the Mutalisks, and kills a few, but will be routed back, at least for the time being. You know, the other side of it is he has those +2 for the Zerglings, which is nice, but no Carapace upgrades means that even a couple of Zealots or anything mixed in there are going to chew through it a little bit faster. +2 coming in for the Stalkers now as well. But he doesn't have that next prism up, so I don't know that he pushes into this. I think that would be a little bit dangerous. Not really any force fields left either.
No, I mean, like this army of Strange, he is about to have +2 finish up, which will make his army a little bit more powerful. While all that was going off as well, he was setting up multiple assimilators. Like I think he had 4 or 5 producing at the same time. So that gas bank is going to be climbing with that Templar Archives coming online as well. And look at this, multiple charge lots in multiple areas here. So he's buying time. He knows what he needs to get to, which this is smart play by Strange, I feel.
Yeah, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before too. There's no Carapace upgrade, so the +1 Zealots are actually able to clean up small numbers of Lings that get sent to deal with this. You need a little bit more of a commitment to get that all mopped up. And like you were saying, now Templar Archives is done. We've got Archons coming in. He's actually going into +1 shields instead of an armor upgrade too, because he wants to get the maximum value out of these Archons, knowing that's the best answer he has for the Zerglings.
So much HateMe though, and it's kind of difficult for him to find an angle where it's like, hey, this is the place that I'm going to attack, but he's bouncing from side to side, and he's doing just that. If he gets on top of that shield battery with those mutas, which he absolutely can do, and that's exactly what he goes for, that's going to be a lot of dead probes here, I think, Nate, but a big blink to try and get things done, but blinks into the Banelings. The mutas are fighting and clumping and dealing so much damage. I think this is starting to break the camel's or the donkey's back here a little bit for Strange, because, yeah, that's every little fight that happens, he's just losing a little bit extra.
It's a very tense situation because the map control that he has with this composition of Ling Bane Muta, you don't always see in this matchup. It's just so nice. He has that mobility. It's a huge map. There's so many different angles to come at, especially if those rocks can be broken down later on. If he wants to continue to get aggressive. We have a transition in terms of +2 air, but also the Infestor energy upgrade is going to be coming through. So we'll see him moving towards that. Don't necessarily have that hive on the way yet, but maybe he doesn't need it. I think probably just for upgrades down the line and Burrow being researched as well.
Yeah, it's not going to get easier for Strange. Like even though he got up to 4 bases quite quick, he kind of stuck there, right? And I mean, like that's obviously not what he wants. And is he going to lose that +3 as well? I mean, thankfully, it was only a few. That's way bigger of a deal than losing just the +3.
As soon as you said thankfully, he's like, time to go kill all his bros. Yeah, and that's what we're talking about, right? It's that speed, the way he's able to hit him, because you've got to wrap around quite a ways to go up into the main base here on Cosmic Sapphire. Little Zealot run by tries to go through him, but it's like you said, he got to 4 bases. Great work, awesome, sure, but getting past that, getting that 5th base, moving forward, now it becomes even more difficult. If you take that base above the main for Strange, then the mutas are kind of ping-ponging there. It's an uncomfortable spot. It kind of opens up the harass even more for him. And then the other option is the gold. So I don't know. That's just a little bit too far out. So he's getting ready for a huge assault. We've got a lot of Archons. Banelings are going to counterattack, but I guess his counter to it is he doesn't have as many probes there anymore. But we have, I think that's 7 Archons with this army to try and push into this. There are burrowed infestors. He does not have Neural Parasite yet, though.
Neural Parasite, that would absolutely clinch it for him here. I mean, he does have quite a few infestors available, and he's just like, you know what? Can't kill that army right now. I'm just going to do the counterattack. Or at least he feels that it's not worth just slamming that army right now. But Strange, he's actually able to hit 4 bases at the same time with what he has. That's a lot of queens to battle, though. Remember, he doesn't have the armor upgrade, so the queens actually do pretty okay against those stalkers.
Yeah, and interesting choices being made as well. Targeting the Cybernetics core early on by HateMe to make sure that he can't warp in additional stalkers. He gets the Templar Archives, and that's it. He can't build any more anti-air. So even if he had a couple of warp-ins left, he would not be able to make anything that can stop this. And then you pick off the Nexus, you take away the option for the recall. They are recalling somewhere to the natural. So they'll save this space, but at a high price, we should say.
This game got really crazy and wild, and I think this all went a lot better for Strange, weirdly enough, because I'm looking at the work account. HateMe still got 30-odd drones, but I'm not sure what they can do. Oh my goodness, he's going on top of this Nexus. Why?
Yep.
Why?
I'm inclined to agree with you, Muslim. Okay. Yeah, the hallucinated Archons in there, too. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I love that he's like, okay, if he's going to try and target down the Archons or go for a big push, I want to at least have the intimidation factor. HateMe. If he can buy time, install this out, then sure, he's got this gold base. That's pretty awesome. But what a scrappy situation. How about that? How about that, Ben? We get a nice little base trade for our first game casting together again. I love it.
Beautiful stuff. I mean, like, this game... Oh, the Infestors, they get caught. There's an Observer right there. Oh, no. That was really, really bad for HateMe. And HateMe... Oh, mate, I'm looking at his face on the camera right now, and I think he's feeling it. And GG, that first game kind of escaped his grasp there, Nate. That was... what a brutal, messy one to start things off.
Yeah, I mean, it seems so interesting, the flow of it, right? We had the early resonating glaives, but he also took the early third base. Strange was kind of constantly looking for opportunities to be aggressive without having to make that all-in level of commitment at any point. So he was, okay, I'm going to move out with this, but I'm going to take this third pretty quickly. And then as soon as I defend that counter attack and I get everything set up, boom, straight to the fourth base. I'm going to have a ton of Blink Stalkers. I'm going to have a bunch of Adepts early on. The Adepts, maybe they didn't really do what they needed to do, but he forced out a lot of links, delayed the fourth base of HateMe a little bit, and then HateMe with that Muta style, Muta Link Bane. It's fun, it's fast. Not necessarily the best when there's that many Archons, though. That's kind of the problem you run into, is that AoE splash is so good against the Mutas. It's so good against the Banelings and the Zerglings. You need something a little more durable to get through those bad boys.
Yeah, it's very curious to me as to why he'd steer clear of Roaches or Ravagers like for so long, because it felt like if you're looking to bust a location, having a Roach Ravager with like Ling Bane is just an amazing comp to do that, you know? Like, you can take out the batteries really easily. Any units have to move continuously because of the biles and stuff. You just have that raw power that he was kind of lacking. Hopefully next game's going to be as exciting, but I definitely think Strange probably feels quite a bit of relief there, because there was a few moments where it's like, oh no, I just lost 23, 24 probes to a bunch of Banelings, and you know, not that much really went super well, but he ended up clinching it in the end, and that was pretty decisive of him to attack when he did, because maybe 20 seconds later, then you have 8 Infestors in a big fight with Neural Parasite. Could have been looking at a very different winner.
Yeah, oh, especially if you neural those Archons and you have the links around everything else. Like, we've seen that is a clutch play that you can make. Didn't work out in game 1. We'll see what happens now as we're loaded in to Data C. And leading the series in the bottom left is our red Protoss. He is Strange.
And spawning over in the top right, as our blue Zerg, it is HateMe. But it's got to be said, HateMe's defense of the Adept stuff early on was actually really good. Like, obviously you have to make a lot of extra lings to deal with it, but the fact that it wasn't extra committal from Strange felt like HateMe read the whole situation very well. And while I thought it was a bit of an error not going for the Roach Warren, we got to see that he had no intention of going for a Roach Warren ever. So it was like, hey, I can do this without pretty damn well. And yeah, he did just that. Like, I think he got himself into a pretty decent spot there. But you're right, the moment afterwards where he kind of dived on the third just before +1 finished, maybe that was a little bit overzealous.
Yeah, that upgrade, we know it's huge. Lings attack really fast. Protoss units have that armor built in, so it's not even so much oh, we're gonna burst you down, but we're kind of mitigating that advantage that you have built in. And then you add the shield battery into the mix, finishing at just the right time, and things just get a little bit out of hand. It's also kind of like a painful experience, you know, when your strategy is in that weird dynamic where, okay, I'm going to defend resonating glaive adepts with Zerglings, and then, okay, so he did the thing that was good against Lings and it didn't work. So surely he's going to change his direction. But then, you know, Strange just kind of went back into a style that was really good against that. He didn't go for something that would be weak against the Lings. That one Stalker move out in the Southwest was tough, but it just comes back to he kept that economy up so well, and he waited a long time to take all those assimilators. You were pointing out he took like 4 of them at once towards the end, and then boom, all of a sudden he's got 800 gas for Archons. And it doesn't matter how many Lings you have, you're not you're not just surrounding and killing all of that.
No, yeah, I think like you've always got to give players credit, right, for making the switch when you have to make the switch, because you know none of us are perfect. If you see your opponent making pure Lingbane Muta, you might be thinking, hey, what kind is this? Archons, obviously, but he did a good job of buying time so he could get the Archons out, and very often you fall into that pattern where it's like, all right, I'm going to be defensive and try and hold on for Archons, and Strange was like, no, I'm going to defend, obviously, but I'm also going to do lots of harass, so you don't automatically think I'm up to no good. This game, we do see a different opening from Strange. It will be the Stargate. So already in these two games, we're seeing very different openings from him, which that's always a scarier Protoss to go up against.
Yeah, and this is kind of interesting too, right? When we think about the way that last game went, he didn't have the Stargate at all at any point. Now, if the Mutalisks come out, or maybe when the Oracle comes out, HateMe will decide, okay, this is not something I want to do, if he has the option to make this switch easily. But I think he was probably planning on doing that the whole time, like you said, because he just never got the Roach Warren at all. And the Overlord comes to the front. He can bring the Oracle over for vision and continue to poke it away. He can go right across the map and try to get something done. We'll just have to see how aggressive he wants to be. But I do like that in spite of his early aggression, there was still a fast third in mind. You know, Strange, he's thinking about those next steps ahead and not just tunnel visioning on kill, kill, kill right now.
Yeah, certainly. And like this map, there's that big dead airspace behind the main and the natural. You can actually sneak in there if you want to behind the natural without taking too much damage. But Oracles, they're a very good weapon of choice. We saw Mana utilizing them to great effect with just like 2 or so. And then when he saw, wow, goes for the larvae just to get something done with it. We saw him, when he took damage on 1 Oracle, he kept that back at home, made an extra Oracle anyway, just to dive in again with 3 fresh Oracles, which was really cool. And they constantly make it so the Zerg has to pay attention. They have to keep their drones safe. And looks like he's going to try and line this up with a couple of Adepts at the top. So let's see how HateMe defends this.
Yeah, it's kind of a good back and forth. The first Oracle, I thought it was an interesting choice, like you were saying too, going in, just hitting that larva. The Adepts, shade in, pull back. And this is nice because he's bringing the harassment on multiple fronts. And I think, to your credit, when you do these types of builds, you can increase the amount of unforced errors that your opponent is going to have. Or I guess you are forcing the error in this situation. But if you make that one little slip up, you forget to do something while you're dealing with this, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I meant to build this. And then a few seconds later, that attack hits and it's just in the nick of time. So it's going to be a lair straight into it for HateMe. He's got the Roach Horn this time around. So maybe something a little bit more in the ballpark of what we expect PvZ-wise. Shield Battery is done in Strange's third, and we will have ourselves a nice little macro game here, perhaps, Benjamin.
Oh, no, yeah, certainly. It's lined up to be a good one thus far. These Oracles do take a little bit of damage, which, you know, not too big a deal. Obviously, you'd like to keep them as healthy as possible, but they are Protoss. They do regenerate over time. But Strange is lining up to do something, or at least setting up for the same units as game 1. You're just going to have the assistance of Oracles with it, which is kind of nice. No Adept Glaives, obviously, either, but he's got that third base nice and set up. He's getting the Blinkstalks online, getting a +1 online as well. A lot of gateways. He's been very good about his infrastructure layout, like just making these walls and making it kind of difficult for HateMe to engage, truly.
Yeah, I really like that too. Just cutting off the surface area where he can go in and find those holes to get the run bys. We know from that last game too, we expect it out of Zergs, especially once those upgrades come in. You're going to get hit with the Baneling run bys. You're going to get hit with the Zergling run bys. Limit the avenues of attack. And if he wants to throw Banelings into a gateway to blow that wall up, he'd love that. Why not? Sure, please. Please waste your Banelings there. And Strange gets ready. 6 minutes and 15 seconds. He's got a probe parked on that 4th base as we have a Hydralisk Den finishing for HateMe.
Totally different unit comp for HateMe this game. Like, not only is he going for the Roaches and the Ravagers kind of thing, going for the Hydras as well. So skipping out that spy, it's like, it didn't work, tried it. It definitely got some damage done, but those transitions by Strange were pretty damn good. Still following up with the +2 melee. +2 Banes are obviously super damn good when they get there, meaning they can one-shot probes from that point on. But Hydralisks and a few Ravagers will definitely be able to eke out quite a bit of firepower. And Strange, he likes this kind of timing push here with the Stalkers and the Sentries.
Yeah, he can force out a lot of units if HateMe's being too greedy, but he still has the option, of course, to try and make that pullback, make that retreat. And if there's a single mistake, that hatchery gets popped. You lose a couple Ravagers, a couple Hydras. suddenly HateMe's first attack gets delayed an astronomical amount, and Strange can get that fourth with no problem. And he does have it finishing up back home while all of this is going on. So everything he picks up now is absolute gravy. He's going to jump back. All of the links. Now, keep in mind, all the upgrades have been focused on the Zerglings still this game, too. So getting the stasis on just the Zerglings alone removes most of the damage at this time. He doesn't have the attack upgrades for the Hydras. The range upgrade just finishes here after the fight. So Strange able to get really great value out of this push, force out a lot of units to be built. And HateMe, if he's not going to attack right now, then I mean, Strange is just going to economically run away with it. So he needs to find some footing in this game quickly.
You know, I'm looking at this though, Nate, and I'm like, I like HateMe's position a lot better. Like, his army is actually way more stocky than it was the game before. And I mean, it's not even reached its final form yet. Like, Speed Bane's coming online, you got the +2 coming online as well for the melee. And Strange, while he was doing all that, is kind of a distraction to get this fourth base fully operational, which it is now. But what does he actually have to keep, or batter and bruise this army? His firepower is a lot less deadly.
Yeah, it doesn't really have an answer. We're missing the Archons from the last game in this composition, because while he did delay the Lings on the offensive, there's a lot of Ling Bane pushing through, and the Roaches, excuse me, the Hydralisks and the Ravagers can kill the Nexus while the Stalkers are forced to constantly blink back and retreat. And those are +2 Banelings, so you can't let even one make it to the probe line, and unfortunately one kind of does. 17 probes killed here. Strange loses that fourth base. Now, we don't have a fifth from HateMe, but I don't know how the Protoss is going to retake that fourth. Without that AoE answer. The Colossus is just starting, but he doesn't have the money. He hasn't started the range upgrade yet for them even. So if he gets a Colossus out, you typically think, oh, that helps. But I think he'd probably need like 3 to clean up this army and the upgrades. So definitely not looking all that good. Big surround coming in for HateMe. He's going to get on the backside of the Stalkers. Yes, you can blink away. Now your probes are free. And the Hydras and Ravagers, there's just still no answer for them at all. The Stalkers are not going to win that fight head to head. The third base is being obliterated, and we are going to game 3.
That was actually a much better game from HateMe overall. And like, that shows me that Strange kind of has this idea in mind that he did, and he does it very well. It looked like his force fields are always pretty damn good. But HateMe, he just had the Ravagers that time. He had the Hydras in the back line that time as well. So his army was just better at dealing with it. And overall, he just, once he said, hey, I'm going to attack this spot, Strange before, he could hold on because the Mutas weren't as strong in the fights. But this game, he couldn't at all. Also, it's really worth noting how he's utilizing these Banelings. You see them kind of rolling into the Stalkers, and they continue rolling. And you might be like, why isn't he blowing up? Those Banelings are going to deal damage whether you attack move and just waste them, or they get killed by those Stalkers. And getting killed by the Stalkers waste quite a few of those Stalker shots. So he's using those Banelings like a meat shield to let his opponent kill them, and they're still dealing the damage. So it's HateMe's doing a lot of very good stuff in these engagements, and that's why Strange's army just doesn't look like it's doing anything. It's also got to keep splitting against those Banelings as well. So this style definitely looks like it fits HateMe a lot better than the previous one.
Yeah, didn't really tunnel vision on that composition that he wanted to do, like in game number 1. And I think it was really cool because we mentioned it. He had the Ravagers, he had the Hydras, but all the upgrades were for the Zerglings. All the upgrades were for the Banelings. So even in that fight, when he's ready to defend this, and he's like, okay, I'm going to be going against Hydra Ravager, maybe some Lurker follow up, a little bit of Ling Bane. No, it was really the Lings were doing the heavy lifting in that big push. They separate the Stalkers from the fourth base, and it was an easy cleanup for the Hydras. A nice dynamic best of 3 we get to start our day with as we load into Inside and Out for game number 3.
It's always fun when you get two players that are obviously pretty close in skill level, and they're like really testing each other and kind of bouncing off each other and trying to leapfrog ahead in terms of what beats what. But spawning over in the bottom left here, currently 1-1, as the Red Protoss, it is Strange.
And his opponent in the Northeast, bringing it back here to game 3, he is HateMe.
Stargate, Twilight Council. If you're a betting man, Nate, what would you think he's going to do on a map like this?
Oh, goodness, Benjamin. You know, I've just played, I've played so many hundreds of thousands of games of Protoss. I would assume, I don't know, Dark Templar drop, right? Is that still a thing anymore? There you go. That's my answer. I want to see something crazy. I would like a third different strategy compared to the previous two. So that's where I'm going. That's where I'm going.
Nice.
The Oracle's Eye says DT's this game.
If I ask Kevin this kind of question, given that he is a gambling man, he'd bet on both and then bet on several other things all at the same time. That's how he plays the
he
roulette
takes
table.
a parlay that guarantees no matter what he ends up with 0. No matter what if he hits on all, he makes 0. If he loses them all, he's 0.
Yeah. Kevin's like, yeah, I hit, and it's like, oh, but you lost, and it's like, no, I definitely won, even though I bet on absolutely everything. He's a great guy. He's a great guy. Always optimistic as Kevin. All righty, a little bit of pro harass on these minerals just to make HateMe. Yeah, man. Anyway, I could talk forever about Kevin and all his fun qualities. He has so many of them. But yeah,
really does.
I haven't seen too much of the DT stuff. Like, obviously, there were these. Do you go for the 4 DT opening where you deal damage, or the 3 DT opening, and then you get the Adepts quickly after? Kind of falling out of fashion a little bit. It's mainly been a lot about the Stargate openings, just because the Oracles provide so damn much. And then obviously with this hero style where it's like, hey man, those Oracles are actually really damn good with Stalker follow-up and stuff too. So they have so many moments in the game where they make the life very difficult for the Zerg player. But he's going to go for the Twilight Council this game, as we see here. So Adepts, DTs, who knows?
I don't really have much to complain about in terms of his game 1 build. He didn't really get the value out of the Adepts, but he could do that this game. If he gets scouted, it could end up being a little bit of a facade. Okay, maybe it'll look like I'm going Adepts, but could actually turn this into either that DET play we were talking about, or maybe a little bit more conservative of a style, take that early blink and kind of just be ready for whatever. But I don't really feel like that's the vibe that Strange has been giving us. He kind of likes to take that early jab, at least in some way. If it's not with the Oracles, I do expect him to try and bring a little bit of pressure as he takes that third. He's not just sitting back and macroing for the sake of macroing.
No, definitely not. And so far, it looks like a very similar build to what he did in game 1. Like, he starts up the second and third gateway, and then goes for the glaives afterwards. Like, these players play so much day in, day out that he has his timings and has his own way for how he likes to do stuff. So let's have a look at the main base. He's still got 3 probes on each gas, which I think he just kind of shimmied them about a little bit. But very often, if you're doing a super committal, you tend to take 1 off each gas and kind of mess things up. But HateMe, he has his Overlord in a position where he will be able to spot what's happening with those natural gases. Is in a good spot over there. And so far, Strange is definitely going about this in his own way.
Yeah, that resonating glaive opening, just having the ability to deal with those lings. I think if there's one thing he should be picking up on in this series, it's that it's very heavy melee upgrade focused Zerglings so far. We've seen a little bit we've seen the Mutas, we've seen the Hydras, we've seen the Ravagers, but it's been those lings really doing a lot of the heavy lifting for HateMe in this matchup. So is he going to adjust because of that? Are we going to see maybe? I feel like even in the last game, if he had gone back into the Templar archives again, instead of trying to get the Robo and the Robo Bay, you have to invest so much into the upgrades there. Whereas you already have the Twilight from your blink, get the Templar archives, boom, you have the Archons. And then the answer to the Lings is maybe not necessarily like a guaranteed insta win with Archons, but you're not going to get dived on your third base or your fourth base rather, in that same way. So he does have a Forge coming through, and we don't see that probe even on the third base yet. So Adepts are going in and getting a little bit aggressive, but what's the follow-up going to be? It's an Immortal.
Yeah, he went for the third and fourth gas very quickly with this. And his probe count, look at it. He's on 45, still probing up, making Immortals, getting a Forge as well. And HateMe's drone count, not that high. Like, he was really respecting this and thinking maybe it's going to be more as well. He also wasn't greedy with the Roach Warren, got out at a good time there, but yeah, I don't know who I like this more for. Like, Strange definitely got some indirect damage done there, but his third base is not quick at all. So maybe all things said and done, as long as he doesn't lose all those lings, I think HateMe's going to be all right with how the situation went for him, given that he's still alive.
Yeah, and it's not 13 Adepts lost this time either. He did only get 1 drone, but he's cleaned up some lings. He hasn't lost his units, so he's maintained a little bit more of that value. He doesn't need to warp in to reinforce as an afterthought to protect the third. But the third base is still later, as you were saying. So it's a little bit of that. I'm going to throw a little bit softer of a punch, have my follow-up a little bit slower. but he has the Robo Bay much faster compared to that second game. So maybe he's going to have that Colossus option a little bit faster, and we're going to see HateMe have to kind of adjust his own strategy because he's still getting that +1 melee. I feel like that's a no-brainer. We kind of expected that after these first 2 maps, but Masslings, if we go into Colossus, not necessarily the strongest army composition.
No, definitely on a little bit of a window, right? Where, yeah, let's see what actually happens here, because HateMe droned up a lot, like a lot. So his army's actually pretty damn small, and Strange did chrono boost out quite a few Immortals very quickly. And look at the timing window. It's like +1 is finishing up as he's moving out with this army. He's scouting with Hallucination, just clearing up creep for later as well. Setting himself up a path to deal damage with Adepts if he does so please. Just one little fella comes over here. Will kill 2 drones. Nice focus fire.
Okay.
Strange is just scaring his opponent, which is really good play. But HateMe's just kind of looking at it and just being like, you know what? We're droning up, mate. I already droned up really hard. I was scared of that push, but now that you've backed off, this droning up that I've done is really, really going to start paying off for me. And look at him, man. Just so many drones.
He's got big economy, big economy. We have Extended Thermal Lance halfway done. First Colossus is out, second one halfway as well. So very different compositions that we've gotten to see throughout this series entirely. And though we still have the Ravagers and that Ling Bane like we were talking about, it is missing the Hydralisk component this game. Probably thinking to himself, okay, I've been able to dive, I've been able to overwhelm him. Maybe I don't need to build the really expensive squishy units. I can just have those be the Ravagers and get a little more utility out of those Biles to keep the force fields from denying the Zergling surface area. I still don't know how well that's going to work against the Colossus-based play with that Immortal backbone. I think the Roach Ravager Ling might end up struggling a little bit, but let's see how he plays this out, because the execution, the control is still going to decide most of how these fights go.
Yeah, I mean, like, Roach Ravager Ling Bane kind of doesn't have a true counter from the Robo for, like, even if you do get a lot of Immortals, a lot of Colossus, they almost have to be like super high numbers, which is not what you really want with them, because then the Banelings, if they get on top, if the Biles land and make you move about, you're not shooting and stuff, you really want a lot of Archons in the mix with this. But this Roach Ling comp that he's got, it's kind of does a little bit of everything. And HateMe, he has a good army on the map. He's going up to Hive as well. Does have +2 finishing up along with that Baneling speed. I'm curious what he does when that finishes up, because I feel that he has to do something, although he seems very comfortable at just kind of getting his creep spread going, but he's sharking around the middle of the map continuously.
Yeah, it feels like it's hard to make the call, because if he gets force fielded with this kind of army, and actually right there, you see a ton of Lings get sectioned off. They're microwaved instantly by those Colossi. You know, I'm talking, he's found the 200% power setting. Those Lings die instantly. So he's going to be able to replace them, but you're chewing into that bank already a little bit, and you're being reminded, this is not really an army that I can move into. Like this Protoss army from Strange reminds me of a classic Wings of Liberty Deathball. Like this is just absolutely, you need to solve a Rubik's Cube and get the Lament configuration and do a whole bunch of other weird things to find a way around this if you're playing with a, you know, basically a tier 1.5 army.
Oh yeah, definitely. And look at this position. These rocks are not killed, and he's between 2 sets of different rocks that haven't been killed. And Strange, I think this base is just super forfeit. He knows an army's behind him, but there's not exactly an overwhelming number of Ravagers to deal with all the force fields that he's going to have, because he has a ton of energy. All those purple bars there, this whole sentries, and now he's getting into the main base with the Warp Prism as well. Charge is coming online. This is really nice play out of Strange.
Yeah, some people say, oh, the sentry force fields maybe not so good because the Biles can break them. Strange says, well, if I just build more sentries, then you need more Biles and you can't break them in time. Now, most of those force fields have been used. There's still a decent amount of Banelings that haven't come in on this. If he's going to try and recall to save the Colossi, he needed to do it a little while ago. This whole army is going to get chewed up. He did pick off about 16 drones. A lot of Zealots inside of the main base during this time, has made it towards some of the tech as well, but I don't think that those production buildings for the technology for HateMe are in the main base. I think he's got a lot of them in his natural, so gets the spawning pool. It's going to recall nothing. And I don't know. That's a lot to lose for Strange. I don't really think he has the money to rebuild all of that as quickly as he would probably need to. HateMe still has all of his mining for his peripheral bases going, so loses some income, keeps a lot of army supply. What do you make of this, Ben?
This is actually really good for HateMe, because now, like, he survived. He got up to got up to high tech here as well with the +3 melee on the way. He's got the 4 Vipers on the way. That's going to be instrumental at dealing with this Robotech type stuff. And look at Strange. He's like, you know what? Let's make a bunch more sentries. They're going to be useless in these fights to come. And I mean, their energy's low. He just made him. He's obviously teching up and trying to hunker down kind of thing, but he needs time. But I don't think HateMe is really going to give it to him. And look, he has so much army everywhere. It's like, hey, you killed quite a few workers, right? But you were on a low work count when you started that push. He was stuck on like 66 probes or something. So it's not as if Strange was super rich. In fact, yeah, he's in a real bad spot here, Nate.
Yeah, it's just that type of army composition is just so expensive to try and build that. If he had a 5th base and a 2nd robo and he's already back up to like 4 or going into 5 colossi, then you're like, okay, maybe he can get something like that last army. But it's the way that he put it together too. We have to keep in mind he had some ridiculous count of, like, he's lost 16 sentries this game. And I don't even know if the average PvZ you even build more than 10 now. I feel like even 10 feels like a lot of sentries in a game of PvZ. But 16 all dying, that's a ton of gas. So, it's like a whole Vespine Geyser's worth. So he's trying to rebuild everything. But you still have to deal with the Vipers that are on the map now too. You don't typically see them used as the sole anti-air like this, but hey, whatever, it gets the job done. And now you have to deal with Blinding Cloud, Abduct. So those Colossi, they're just big fat targets now.
They certainly are, and he has to kind of sprinkle in Immortals as well, which he is doing before the Ultras came out. I don't know if he got a spot on that Ultralisk cabin, but he's doing the right thing here. Storm on the way, +3 on the way. I mean, 2 extra Robos as well, so he's really respecting the fact that Immortal's going to do really damn well, and maybe like Disruptors or more Colossus down the line as well. But yeah, HateMe, he's going to want to do something soon. But look at that creep spread. The map, I've seen this multiple times on Inside and Out now. Like, it starts getting so enveloped once the creep spread really begins. Nice little gateway wall. Yeah,
I love that. I love that. Use the terrain. Say limit surface area as much as possible. Your opponent loves the lings. Your opponent is going into Ultralisks. It's a lot of up close and personal melee action. And 23 roaches, we know that can be not necessarily the most supply efficient in the game. So while yes, he is maxed out, this isn't like the perfectly rounded off Zerg composition. So I think this is a good move by HateMe to try and send some roaches to harass, but they also get nothing at the same time. So little bit of a toss up, but now he's going to go into the Anabolic Synthesis for the Ultralisks. They're going to get the speed off of creep, and he's just going to build more of them. So I think 3 Immortals at a time and 2 extra Archons. Strange, he's been given that time to wind up and get back into that big maxed out Protoss army, which I wasn't sure he was going to be able to do that. I do still think he needs that 5th base, but let's see if he can get something like that while these Zealots go harass.
Yeah, like, it definitely appears to me like Strange, once he hits the late game, he feels quite comfortable at making the correct transitions, because a lot of his army is actually pretty hard to deal with. Like, he's got the High Templars with Storm and the feedback for the Vipers, and then he's got a lot of chunk in his army with all those Immortals. He's got the Storm, he's got the Sentries as well for Force Fields, which aren't going to come in that handy given that everything can kind of run them over. But yeah, HateMe, it's really going to come down to the Blinding Clouds and good Abducts and maybe just keeping those Vipers alive. I almost want to see from him that A, he gets Adrenal Glands for those Lings, and B, maybe something else like a ton of Banelings just to make life incredibly hard. Or what he's doing here with getting a Great Aspire, he's utilizing the space and time that he has, and the fact that Strange has to sit back. Oh, that's a lot of hallucinations.
And another thing to remind again, like game 1, no Stargate, so you're not thinking about the possibility that, and oh my goodness, I was going to say feedbacks on Vipers could be huge, but the Blinding Clouds get all over the entire army. He does end up retreating into this choke point, and there's the Storm, so we really see this kind of dive composition against so many Immortals, this Death Ball comp that Strange has. This isn't an army that you just run down. You need to pick it apart. You need to take your shots where you can, but this is where I get a little bit concerned. 7 Ultralisks as the reinforcement. There's still a ton of Immortals. There's still 2 Immortals being made at a time. I don't think he killed really any of the Immortals in that fight there. So, and 50 Lings. So we know the Colossi, they're all still alive too. 3 of them could be more than enough with +3 to vaporize those. So army composition wise, Strange still looking fantastic. HateMe, he's got 3,000 minerals and no gas, which not necessarily a fun spot to be when you're up against such a tech heavy Protoss.
No, yeah, and I'm looking at his bases now. Like the top left base doesn't have the gases utilized yet at all. And you know what would really smash this army? A ton of Banes. I'm really sad about the Adrenal Glands still not being there either. But he's looking for engagements, but his army's kind of sprinkled everywhere. And Strange is the one that's doing harasses elsewhere. But HateMe kind of caught with his pants down a little bit here. But the Banelings are starting to get juicy hits in the middle of that army. The Immortals still reigning supreme when it comes to dealing with those Ultras. But will they get the kills that they need? No, the Ultras have to back off. But a lot of Strange's supply did dwindle there. And HateMe, 118 Lings as a response.
That's a lot of Zerglings to make, but there's still 3 Colossi and 2 Archons with this army. If he makes sure to target fire the Immortals onto the Ultralisk, takes those steps back, don't eat the Biles, continue to cut, continue to micro. He's got a couple DTs actually coming in to reinforce this as well. Big damage output. There's the first abduct we get to see on the Colossus. That one will go down. Now with just 1 left, you feel like the Lings can start to do a little bit more, except it took all of the Lings that he just made to do that in the first place. I think he's also out of larva at this point, so 6 more Ultras are going to come out. That's the most fastest way he can spend all of his resources. And for Strange, this is a great base denial. I feel like you could step back, resecure that 5th base and go again. The transition opportunity for that greater spiral we were talking about earlier, it's a pipe dream. He did get it, but he doesn't have the money or the upgrades to move into Broodlords, which would maybe be one of the things that could help here. But another 7 Ultralisks coming out just makes me a little bit nervous.
Certainly does. I mean, that's the one thing that Strange's army is really damn good against, is these big Ultras. But the Immortals are getting kind of low, but look at that, man. These Zealots do such a good job of tanking and,
very well rounded. Like I said, Strange playing, it feels like a little bit of old school style, going for that robo heavy with